was
From
great.
the camera to the
I
couch.
saw that.
Well done, sir.
It's like a show within a show.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Picture
It's because Ted went to the Christmas party too, didn't you, Ted? Can you give us a nod?
he gave you that.
Yeah, he did. And he
I
had a
didn't
good time.
recognize him at the party because he always has a hat on when he's working the camera, and he didn't have a hat at the party. I'm like, you look different.
You guys know how to throw a good party, I gotta say.
Yeah,
I had a good time.
You didn't stay long enough.
No, I had to go to I had to take my mom to a doctor's appointment. But while I was
She's all
there,
good.
I partied. She's all
Solange is
good.
good.
Solange is good. Look,
Well,
they're throwing the name out there.
I drank for you.
Oh, that's good.
Oh yeah, he drank for a lot of people.
Just
at that
enough to
party,
do the
actually.
karaoke, so that worked out
And we
well.
did karaoke, which you saw. If you were
That
up
may have
early, you
led to
saw it.
karaoke.
If you were not up early, you missed
Gonna
it.
see it. It's
Rewind
good.
your
We'll play it
DVR.
later.
Oh, it's good.
We may
We'll
have
play
to
it again
do a
later.
live rendition. Who knows?
I'm up for a live rendition if Ed Henry is.
Backup dancer in the house.
Well, we're having a lot of fun this morning, but there is breaking news, and this is a big one. As Joe Biden might say, it's a big bleeping deal. Obamacare is unconstitutional. That from a federal judge ruling that the Affordable Care Act is invalid as open enrollment closes today, but Obama exchanges are still open for business. So this is likely to go to the Supreme Court. Another big battle over Obamacare. It never seems to end, but this is a big blow to Obamacare.
So there, a judge in Texas, who a lot of people deem to be a credible, thoughtful guy, basically said, if you get rid of the mandate, and the mandate has been gotten rid of, that's part of what President Trump did, then it invalidates the entire bill because the entire Obamacare was premised on the mandate and the
Chief
tax that
Justice
required
John Roberts
people
saved
to
the
do
law
it.
several years ago by saying the individual mandate is a tax. And so the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, basically, this saves it. It's constitutional. It's all good. Now that mandate's gone, it's not so good.
Get ready for left-wing talking points coming home on this, though. They're going to say Republicans don't care about your health. Republicans want to take away your health care. They want to take away your pre-existing conditions. So Republicans better be armed with some good ideas. Come out, talk about the free market, and don't just talk about it, but have plans to implement so that people feel that you are in control of this very important issue. Nothing is more important to people and more at the forefront than their own personal
But
health.
Democrats may have been their own worst enemy here because they put up this law. They made all kinds of promises. Keep your doctor if you like your doctor. Like your plan, keep your plan. That didn't turn out. They said it was going to be
It's
affordable.
going to lower premiums and everything.
Premiums have gone up. So that plays right into what the president has been saying since day one of his campaign. He's now tweeting about this decision saying, as I predicted all along, Obamacare has been struck down as an unconstitutional disaster. Now Congress must pass a strong law that provides great health care and protects pre-existing conditions. Mitch and Nancy get it done. And Pete, what I like about that is that he is immediately putting the ball in the Democrats' court. Yes, Republicans have a responsibility to govern. He's the president. But it's Democrats who crafted this law.
Yep.
What comes next? Nancy Pelosi's not going to be in charge.
I mean, you're right. It goes to Mitch and Nancy, but we all know what Nancy wants to do.
Oh, yes.
Nancy wants to do what Bernie wanted to do, what your favorite socialist from the Bronx wants to do, Ed, which is Medicare for all. I mean, they want government-run health care. As you pointed out last hour so rightly, that's what they wanted to begin with.
From the beginning.
Obamacare was a half measure that they could get in the moment. Socialized medicine is where they want to go.
Yep.
So Mitch is not going to go for that. Nancy is. I don't see anything changing.
Nancy Pelosi is actually responding already. And she is saying tonight's district court ruling exposes the monstrous endgame of Republicans' all-out assault on people with pre-existing conditions and Americans' access to affordable health care. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of demonization here. And I love how they call it the Affordable Care Act. Bottom line was it wasn't very affordable for a lot of people. They lost their doctors, they lost their plans, and they couldn't afford their health care. So they have a lot of nerve talking about it like that.
There are the points that a lot of states' attorney general made, like Ken Paxton in Texas, who brought this case to the feds. That's why the judge was ruling on it, because they said everything that had been promised is not actually turning out. Ken Paxton was on with our own Shannon Bream last night. Here's how he put it.
Obviously, I'm celebrating with the president. This, we believe from the very beginning, was unconstitutional, and we think the judge did the right thing. There's no doubt in my mind that this was unconstitutional. If you remember, they built this on a tax. This is what Judge Roberts said. It was built on this tax. Well, the tax was removed by the Congress at the end of last year. Well, now that the penalty was taken out by Congress at the end of last year in the tax reform bill, the taxing power issue is gone, and therefore the individual mandate falls.
So, as you said, Republicans now have to say, okay, what comes next? They've been against Obamacare from the beginning, so they've got to come up with some plans. We know where the Democrats are. They want Medicare for all, as you say, and here's the big problem with that, is the cost. How do you pay for that? You're talking about a massive expansion of an entitlement.
Well, you can ask Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm sure she will not be able to answer you.
No, she won't. So this will be appealed again. It'll go to the Supreme Court. It'll be very interesting to see what John Roberts does.
You have a different court now than you did under President Obama.
But still, John Roberts, who was the deciding vote in upholding Obamacare. So we'll be watching.
It's an opportunity, though, to show a contrast, because you have Democrats always running with government, and it doesn't work. People know it doesn't work. This is the opportunity for Republicans to come out and say, we have a solution. Don't lose this opportunity.
Wait, opportunities for Republicans to have a solution? That sounds like the border wall. And maybe something they were supposed to do or could have done for 2 years.
Republicans have the White House, the House, and the Senate for the last 2 years.
Last time I checked, that's true. I know President Trump has wanted it. Well, he's reportedly working on a deal, the president, that would delay the border wall fight until the new year, maybe a 2-week extension. I got to look at the details of it. I don't really understand why that would be the case.
They might be kicking the can because you're due to have a partial government shutdown at the end of this coming week. And so maybe the president wants to kick the can past Christmas, but then all of a sudden you're at the beginning of January, Democrats about to take power, maybe their hand is strengthened. And it's interesting because let's not forget, I mean, these news cycles move so quickly. But what dominated this week before Michael Cohen and everything else was that extraordinary meeting in the Oval Office where the president just threw down on Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and said, I promise the American people I'm going to get the border wall. Well, we are going to do this no matter what. And you look right there. Now, Democrats.
It was a wonderful scene.
Many in the mainstream media said, oh, Nancy Pelosi was all over him. She has a much stronger hand. And the president came out of it saying, no, just the opposite, that he believes that the American people are on his side. They want more border security. And Lindsey Graham agrees. Watch.
More than okay for the president to make a reasonable request of the Congress and stick to his guns. He ran on securing our border. The Democrats all voted, 44 of them did, in February of 2018, this year, for $25 billion for the wall as part of a larger deal. Now they won't give him $5 billion that could be well spent. This is arrogance on their part. They hate Trump. They're overreading their mandate.
I'm loving Lindsey Graham 2.0. I mean, I think he's 100% right. I do. And I think Trump needs to be very careful about delays, because the one thing that people expect from him is to not delay, to not be afraid of a government shutdown in order to make this wall a priority. And remember, he ran on that. He ran on immigration. He ran on being tough on this. So the expectation for him is very high on this.
The only rationale is extending through Christmas. That's it. Otherwise, there's no reason to delay. There's no reason to give in.
Problem is that becomes then a week later and a month later.
No, it can't. It can't. It really can't. If you don't get it now, then you're never going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm with you 100%.
Now's the time.
Now is the time to shut it down or get the wall. No doubt about it.
Another big story breaking this morning.
There is. You know, a Afghan war hero, Silver Star recipient, was interviewing at the CIA and admitted to killing a suspected Taliban bomb maker. Now, he made that admission while interviewing at the CIA. Also had admitted that happened in talking to our own Bret Baier in 2016 in an interview about Matthew Goldstein. He served as a Green Beret in Afghanistan, and he talked to Bret Baier about being in that combat environment. He had two Marines
had been killed, and he said, look, we're going to go get this bomb maker. They had not been clear to get the bomb maker through the rules of engagement, but he wanted to do it. It was seen as him being a vigilante. He felt like he was getting justice. Here's what he told Bret Baier, and then we'll explain what's happening to him now.
Did you kill the Taliban bomb maker?
Yes.
Willingly offered up these details at the CIA, right?
That's correct.
And that's where it all started.
Pretty much. You can construe it as a law enforcement mindset. There's limits on how long you can hold guys, and you realize quickly you make things worse. It is an inevitable outcome that people who are cooperating with coalition forces, when identified, will suffer some terrible torture or be killed.
So that's what the sort of confession he made to Bret Baier. He was being honest to the CIA when he was applying for a job about what happened in Afghanistan, and now it's boomeranging. Now they're basically bringing charges against him, and he could face the death penalty. This is serious business.
Yeah, it's amazing. Listen, I struggle with this all the time. First of all, war fighters like this, thank God we live in a nation where men like this will do things on our behalf to keep us safe.
That's right.
In Iraq and Afghanistan, I saw it myself. There's a catch and release program where you catch people, you don't have enough evidence to hold them, then people you know are responsible with blood on their hands from the enemy are released back into the public. In this particular case, this Green Beret said, 2 Marines are dead. I'm going to go find this guy. I'm going to kill him. And because when I kill him, he can't make more bombs and kill more Americans. If you're at war with ISIS, if you're at war with radical Islamists, that's the type of approach you have to have. The problem is our military justice system hunts guys like this down and says, no, you shouldn't have taken that action. You should have left him released. I get what the rules are, and the rules are important, But I side with a guy like him every time because he wants his boys to come home. He wants Americans to come home. He doesn't care if a dirtbag bomb maker gets killed. Yeah. So, unfortunately, our bureaucracy never sees it that way. Army lawyers, special operations lawyers come down on these guys, and it's a shame.
People forget we are at war. I mean, these guys are making, first of all, it's war. And just think about that for a second. These guys are making decisions sometimes in the moment. They're following their gut. Their job is to protect this country and to protect themselves and their men.
All good points made. Let's be fair and point out what the Army is saying in this case. Their Special Operations Command spokesman says Major Matthew Goldstein's immediate commander has determined that sufficient evidence exists to warrant the preferral of charges against him. They're saying this was premeditated. This is a remarkable story, the idea that an American war hero might actually face the death penalty. We want to get your comments on this story. Friends at Fox News.
Just remember, he's an American who put his life on the line and killed a Taliban bomb maker.
That the FBI acted improperly with Michael Flynn.
Americans. It's like another case, Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher.
The only way they know about it is that he was interviewed for a job and told the truth.
And he was honest. He was transparent about the whole thing.
He didn't lie about it. He said, here's what happened.
You know why? Because he comes back to a grateful nation and says, you know what I did on your behalf? I'm going to be honest about it. I'm not going to hide it. I'm not ashamed of it. And he gets punished for it.
And what kind of message are you sending about that, too?
Well, it's
because
rules
he
of
was
engagement.
Forthcoming.
Rules of engagement are out of control in how they restrict war fighters. I think this president has an opportunity to change that. You can do it without being ruthless and indiscriminate. These guys know the line.
All right,
so,
friends at FoxNews.com, what do you think? What would be justice in this case? We want to know what you think. But meanwhile, we've got a lot of other stories.
Maybe a pardon. I mean, listen, guys like this can be pardoned ultimately, too. Anyway.
Well, a new poll shows former Vice President Joe Biden is leading Democrats in the field of possible 2020 candidates. But will it stay that way? Charlie Hurt is here to weigh in. He's live next.
And some people are about to get free money. Ooh, $500 a month.
Yeah.
But at what cost to their community?
And to the taxpayer.
Yeah. Sounds like social.
Joe Biden leads the pack of potential 2020 Democratic contenders. Close on his heels, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and rising star Beto O'Rourke. Here to react, Fox News contributor and opinion editor and columnist at the Washington Times, Charlie Hurt. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Ed.
So is this just name ID early on? Because as the president himself was saying in some of those rallies leading into the midterms, he's really 1% Joe. Every time Joe Biden has run on his own, he's in the low single digits.
Yeah, at this point, it largely is that. But I have to say that, there's been some improvement for Joe Biden because, of course, the last poll they did had the entire field behind I don't know or other. So that's a slightly bigger problem. But it is true at this point, it's largely name idea. And quite frankly, when you look around and you talk to Democratic voters these days, as you have, it's kind of hard to imagine that a guy like Joe Biden, who's been part of the political scene for decades, he's been in administration for 8 years. It's kind of hard to imagine Democratic voters, given the current environment, going for a guy like him. And when you have a situation where you're going to have early voting starting in California the day that you have the Iowa caucuses begin this year. All that front-loading of voting out west is going to give a tremendous advantage to other candidates other than, say, a guy like Joe Biden, who's going to be running more in the sort of traditional old-school Republican mold and give that advantage to people who are talking about socialist
We
programs.
teased earlier that there's another report saying that Biden might be telling Democrats privately that Beto O'Rourke could be his VP, get a young face. But is that ticket a little too white male for the Democratic Party right now?
I think it absolutely is, but it's also going to be the strategy you see. He's got to find somebody else that he can kind of sort of draft off of that picks up that vital support that is increasingly, we're seeing, as you know, Ed, is increasingly taking control of the Democratic Party.
Let's talk about another Democrat who has designs on the White House, but interesting, she doesn't really pop up in that poll. Elizabeth Warren, given the DNA test, the backlash. Here's what she's saying now.
I'm not a person of color, and I haven't lived your life or experienced anything like the subtle prejudice or more overt harm that you may have experienced just because of the color of your skin.
So she previously said, quote, my Indian parents were forced to elope because of white racism, certainly suggesting she was a person of color. Now she says to a largely black audience, I'm not a person of color.
Yeah, once again, she's caught kind of trying to rewrite history. Earlier, she got caught with her hand in the affirmative action cookie jar, and then released that incredibly embarrassing, ridiculous DNA test that revealed that she has less Indian heritage than probably either one of us. For her to claim now that, oh, she's never tried to use it to her advantage, well, my goodness, her entire political career is based on trying to use that to her advantage. She tried using it to her advantage this entire time that she's been sort of jockeying to run for president. So, just on the face of it, it's not true, and that's not just a problem with people like me who probably are not going to would not support her under any circumstances.
Yes,
that's a problem for the Democratic base who obviously, understandably, take this stuff very seriously and find it really offensive to have someone like this trying to claim the mantle of those issues.
All right, breaking news. Charlie Hurt will not support Elizabeth Warren in 2020. Just
breaking
so you know.
news.
All right, thanks, Charlie.
You bet.
Meanwhile, a Seattle law school cutting its ties with ICE. Our next guest is a student who disagrees strongly with that decision. These students, the White House budget director and former South Carolina congressman, will replace John Kelly at the end of the year. There's a little transition going on now. Mulvaney's deputy will take over at the budget office. He tweeted out, "This is a tremendous honor. I look forward to working with the president and the entire team. It's going to be a great 2019. We'll see." You're seeing live protests heating up in Paris for a fifth straight weekend. Nearly 8,000 officers and armored vehicles are patrolling city streets at this hour. Protesters are angry over low wages and tax inequality. Also, that Paris Climate Accord sort of blew up in their face. France now investigating whether Russia is urging the Yellow Jacket movement online after reports linking the Kremlin to social media accounts promoting unrest in Paris. And Facebook now apologizing, yes, for another massive leak that exposed photos of nearly 7 million users. For 12 days, a software bug allowed third-party apps to gain access to photos of 6.8 million users. That in September alone. Facebook claims the breach is now fixed. Affected users will be notified, they say. Facebook working on getting copies of those private photos deleted from the 1,500 apps. Good luck with that. It's going to take a while.
Man,
that's tough.
All right, well, the past 18 months have been full of Democrats pushing the Russia collusion narrative.
A presidential campaign may be compromised by the Russians.
That looks a lot like collusion to me.
I do think there's evidence of collusion.
He was colluding with the leader of a hostile power deliberately.
There's plenty of evidence of collusion. We know that the Trump campaign wanted the Russians to give them help.
We already know that there was collusion.
This after guilty pleas about lying to the FBI agents and investigations into campaign finance. Where is the collusion, some may ask? Dan Bongino,
looking for it.
Former Secret Service agent, former NYPD officer, and host of the Dan Bongino Show, joins us, and author of the book, hit book, Spygate. So, Dan, Mueller's team on Friday released key documents relating to the FBI's question of Flynn. One of the exhibits, which we'll put on the screen, struck and redacted. We don't know who that is. Both had the impression at the time that Flynn was not lying or did not think he was lying. Flynn said struck as bright but not profoundly sophisticated. So they said he wasn't lying. They walked him in without lawyers. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, Pete, this is devastating. On the collusion front first, though, you ever see the movie Mean Girls where Gretchen tries to make fetch happen and Regina says fetch isn't going to happen? Collusion's not going to happen, guys. It's not. It's done. It's finished. There is no evidence of it. It's over. They've evolved from treason to collusion to obstruction to campaign finance reform. That's going to go nowhere, too. But on the Flynn case, what's profoundly disturbing about this, and just to be clear, what bothers me the most is the fact that the lawyer thing, that Andy McCabe, the number 2 at the FBI, seemed to incentivize Flynn to speak without a lawyer. Now, to be clear on this, as a former federal agent, that's not illegal. There's no requirement that Mike Flynn have a lawyer present. But we know now that that was probably not SOP, standard operating procedure, for an interview of that kind of gravity. Why? Because Jim Comey admitted it himself on another network in an interview where he said what? I wouldn't have gotten away with it in another administration.
Yeah,
gotten away with what?
Right. Dan, it seems crazy what James Comey said, as you point out. It seems like the behavior of Peter Strzok, Andrew McCabe, which we'd heard about before, is only getting worse with these court filings. And there's a real possibility in coming days that Judge Sullivan could just say, I'm throwing these charges out against General Flynn. But here's a bottom line question I have to take the other side for a moment. Why then, if this was all rigged against General Flynn and he really did nothing wrong, why didn't he tell the truth?
Ed, we don't know that. I understand people listening are going to say, but Dan, he took a plea. I'm hesitant to say it, but I have reasonably good sources on this. He took that plea for one reason and one reason only. He was bankrupted by the government. He was a 30-year military professional. He didn't work for Goldman Sachs. He was not a multi-billionaire. He was bankrupted. The Mueller probe basically used witch hunt-like tactics to threaten him and his family. It would have gotten worse. He had to take that plea. I am absolutely convinced, based on an exhaustive amount of research, that Mike Flynn didn't lie. That Mike Flynn genuinely did not recall the fact that he had discussed sanctions. Now, Ed, you may say, well, again, what makes you believe that? Mike Flynn admits in the FBI's own paperwork that he knew they had a transcript. He says to Andy McCabe in the conversation, well, you probably know what I said. Right. Why would he lie? That's an argument for his innocence, not his guilt.
Dan, I just have to ask you, because we're having a lot of conversations about money, and I tend to be a hawk when it comes to money. And this investigation now, this Mueller investigation, is costing $25.2 million for taxpayers. And I remember when it was Benghazi that was being investigated, when it was Hillary Clinton's emails, Democrats were always talking about what a big waste of money that was. So to what end is this now with this investigation? Because it seems like it's never going to stop until they find something, and they're not finding what they want.
Yeah, well, they're not investigating crimes in search of people. They're investigating people in search of crimes. Those people are Donald Trump and his team. And Jedediah, what's really disturbing about this is, by the way, the Mueller probe is the biggest ripoff in American history. We're all getting worked on this huge, right? The difference with Benghazi and Hillary Clinton's email scandal is those actually happen. Like those things actually happened. People actually died in Benghazi for American patriots. Hillary really did have a private server to circumvent government privacy rules. But here's the deal with collusion. It never happened. There is no evidence, $25 million, and there's not a scintilla of evidence this collusion, a fairy tale, actually happened. It's a total ripoff. Biggest ripoff in American history.
No, it's a great point. Well, someone who's been on the other side of you on this issue from the beginning, Representative Eric Swalwell. He may be a 2020 hopeful. We're not sure. He's been talking to the media, as he often does, saying that there's more evidence that Trump was associated with a criminal campaign. Listen to Swalwell.
The bigger picture here is that you are now seeing more evidence than ever that Donald Trump was associated with a criminal campaign, a criminal transition, and presides today very likely over a criminal presidency.
What's he setting the table for in the House?
Yeah, this is one of the slimiest members of the House. I'm serious. Swalwell, from the start, has been lying disingenuously about Donald Trump. First, Donald Trump colluded. Then he was associated with collusion. Then Donald Trump was a criminal. Then he was associated with criminals. Swalwell knows he's got nothing. He's a conspiracy theorist. He should not be discussed in polite company anymore, this guy.
All right.
Well, then we'll stop talking.
Thanks,
quoting
Dan.
Mean Girls earlier. Pete was quoting Gossip Girl earlier. All kinds of stuff happening.
Dan, thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan.
Appreciate it. All right. Well, our vice president's faith being targeted by the left again. This time, an incoming Democratic congresswoman, one of the first Muslim congresswomen, mocking the VP. The backlash she's now facing this morning.
Law school depriving its students of real-world work experience, deciding to suspend its externship program with ICE after a complaint by a student who then filed a petition.
Yep, one student, an email from the school's dean to students saying in part, quote, I am suspending our externship placement with ICE. Based on its current policies and practices, as educators, lawyers, and soon-to-be lawyers, we hold particular power and bear a special responsibility to be peacemakers and to assist those who are suffering due to the unjust operation of our legal system, laws, and their enforcement. Here to react, campusreform.org correspondent and third-year law student at Seattle University School of Law, Thomas Reinhard. Thomas, thank you very much for being here this morning. So you heard what the dean had to say. This externship has to end because it's unethical as lawyers to work with ICE. What do you say to that?
Well, to me, it seems a little bit hypocritical. They always try to hide behind their Jesuit values and saying that precludes them from being able to allow students to extern with ICE. But, we brought up with the administration just a couple of weeks ago that ICE does a lot more than just enforce our borders. They enforce the drug trafficking, international child sex trafficking. So there are a lot of social justice issues that ICE actually tackles. So it's really disingenuous and just seems to me to be just a political maneuver because they disagree with the president's enforcement of border policy.
Thomas, the program director actually gave a statement on the suspension, saying students raised concerns after ICE presence at our annual externship fair caused them to feel unsafe. We believe a real possibility exists that placing a student in an ICE externship may force them to act unethically or unlawfully. What's your response to that statement?
Yeah, well, we've seen this a lot over throughout other college campuses. The Leadership Institute's Campus Reform has done a great job of reporting on that. But what's really interesting is that in a law school, we're faced with these same issues with our student body, where people feel unsafe, and it's. Frankly, there's no justification for that when we're lawyers that are being trained on the rule of law, being trained on, knowing both sides of an issue. So to me, it just seems like, why would we want to limit student opportunity? We're not forcing students to extern with ICE, but that opportunity should be available for students who want to pursue a path in law enforcement. And they're being shut out. It's not fair.
Yeah, it's not a mandatory externship. You can if you want to. This is, we've got some stats about ICE's legal team. They've got 1,200 attorneys, 300 support staff. It covered over 900,000 hearings in 2017. Turns out immigration law is a big practice. Our government is involved in it. Yet the first statement I read, I'm still stuck on it. Your school says that, no, you're being trained to be a peacemaker. Well, I thought you were being trained to follow the law and the Constitution.
Well, absolutely, and there's really no respect for that. What about my thing with the peacemaker issue is, what about not everybody that's crossing our borders illegally is a peacemaker? So really, if we want to enforce our borders, we have to. We need lawyers to be able to help support those ICE agents and enforce our law. And especially here in Washington State, where we're a border state, we have really large ports. ICE needs legal externs to be able to assist them in combating these really serious issues that really affect our community here. So to me, it really is just a political maneuver by Seattle U, and it's just really unfortunate and honestly embarrassing as a student to have just another political decision made by this administration.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, Thomas. It's not surprising. I've taught in academia. I know how this works in terms of the manipulation and trying to get their message across. But ICE actually issued a statement as well saying it's disheartening that an institution dedicated to teaching the laws of this country and whose core values include justice and diversity would prevent its students from gaining valuable professional experience. I tend to agree with that, and I'm guessing you do as well.
Yeah, I do. And, it's just really sad because the school's ranking has dropped. And since 2012, we were ranked in the low 80s. Last year, we were ranked 128. And so we've fallen 40 some odd spots in the last 5 years. And in large part because they're not focusing on the rule of law. They're not focusing on training students to have experiences that will actually help them in the real world. They're focusing on racial justice book trainings and clubs and gender and the law. I mean, I had to fight to get a basic tax class offered this next semester. Those are the kind of classes that are going to help me, not these social justice oriented, random sort of classes. So
a basic tax class.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
That's what happens.
Thomas, I have a feeling you just made yourself a lot more popular on campus. I just want you to know that. In one way or another.
Yeah, only one semester to go, so hopefully not too much longer. But
good luck. Keep us posted, Thomas. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for being here.
Appreciate it. Good
appreciate
stuff.
it.
Thanks.
Got it.
Coming up, protect those gifts because 'tis the season to watch out for porch pirates.
Porch pirates.
That was
From the
great.
camera to the
I
couch.
saw that.
Well done, sir.
It's like a show within a show.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's because Ted went to the Christmas party too, didn't you, Ted? Can you give us a nod?
He gave you a nod.
Yeah, he did. And he
I
had a
didn't
good time.
recognize him at the party because he always has a hat on when he's working the camera, and he didn't have a hat at the party. I'm like, you look different.
You guys know how to throw a good party, I gotta say.
Yeah.
I had a good time.
You didn't stay long enough.
No, I had to go to I had to take my mom to a doctor's appointment. But while I was
all
there,
good.
I partied. She's all
Solange is
good.
good.
Solange is good. Look, throwing the name out there.
I drank for you.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, yeah, he drank for a lot of people.
Just
at that
enough to
party,
do the
actually.
karaoke, so that worked out
And we
well.
did karaoke, which you saw. If you were
That
up
may have
early, you
led to
saw it. If
karaoke.
you were not up early, you missed
Gonna
it.
see it. It's
Rewind
good.
your
We'll play it
DVR.
later.
Oh, it's good.
We
We'll
may
play
have
it
to
again
do a
later.
live rendition. Who knows?
I'm up for a live rendition if Ed Henry is.
Backup dancer in the house.
Well, we're having a lot of fun this morning, but there is breaking news, and this is a big one. As Joe Biden might say, it's a big bleeping deal. Obamacare is unconstitutional. That from a federal judge ruling that the Affordable Care Act is invalid as open enrollment closes today, but Obama exchanges are still open for business. So this is likely to go to the Supreme Court. Another big battle over Obamacare. It never seems to end, but this is a big blow to Obamacare.
So there, a judge in Texas, who a lot of people deem to be a credible, thoughtful guy, basically said, if you get rid of the mandate, and the mandate has been gotten rid of, that was part of what President Trump did, then it invalidates the entire bill because the entire Obamacare was premised on the mandate and,
And
the
Chief
tax that
Justice
required
John Roberts saved
to
the
do
law
it.
several years ago by saying the individual mandate is a tax. And so the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, basically, this saves it. It's constitutional. It's all good. Now that mandate's gone, it's not so good.
Get ready for left-wing talking points coming home on this, though. They're going to say Republicans don't care about your health. Republicans want to take away your health care. They want to take away your pre-existing conditions. So Republicans better be armed with some good ideas. Come out, talk about the free market, and don't just talk about it, but have plans to implement